Hello, Contrarian Dude here, and last night I was at a family gathering and the subject of politics came up, and it was a good mixed crowd. There was someone who, I actually posed the question, if you had to choose right now, you had to vote between Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, or Trump, who would you vote for? And the crowd was mixed because every single person had a representative. But anyway, in that discussion, I had to kind of come up with my own answer, which I hadn't really thought about. I've been asked a bunch of times in the YouTube comments, but the truth is I wouldn't vote for any of those people. But I actually had to come up with an answer, and so I thought I'd share that with you. And I think maybe my analysis is the interesting part of how I arrived at whatever decision I arrived at. So the first thing I looked at is whether or not whether or not their heart is true. And so the first person that gets disqualified is Hillary Clinton. Hillary, just like Obama, just like Bush, just like Clinton, and just like Daddy Bush, and I don't know much about American politics before that, but certainly for all of those ones who I've watched, they specifically and deliberately hate America. They are with every breath and every intention they are trying to destroy America. That may sound a little bit inflammatory to people who don't understand exactly what's going on in the world, but let me paint this picture for you. All these people believe in and are advocates of a world government. They believe national sovereignty is too difficult to manage, lots of different countries, it's the cause of a bunch of wars, and what they want is one global government that rules over everyone and everything. A global government at the United Nations based on the model of collectivism. That is their goal, that's their agenda, they state it, they're not particularly secret about it, and they will state that that is their goal and what they think is best for the world. What they don't mention, though, is that in order to achieve that, you have to really destroy national sovereignty. A strong nation is not a candidate to surrender its sovereignty, but a weak nation is. So if America can be made to be broke, if there can be social strife, if there can be riots in the streets, if there can be massive division, blacks versus whites, men versus women, rich versus poor, the 99% versus the 1%, the more division they can create, the more we can attack each other, the more social strife, the more chaos they can do, then America can be brought to her knees, and eventually America will be willing to surrender her sovereignty to a world government. And that is their agenda. And with, as I said, the consistent policy of all of our presidents over the last several decades has been to destroy America. And Hillary is 100% without question in that camp. And if you're an advocate of world government, then you might subscribe to that. I'm not an advocate of world government. I don't think it's a good idea. It's certainly not a good idea under the model of collectivism. And so knowing that Hillary is like that and is actively trying to destroy the country, that would put her at the very bottom of the list for me. The next candidate is Bernie Sanders, and I've had the pleasure of interacting with a bunch of Bernie Sanders fans over the last few months on my YouTube channel, and they've shared some information with me which I thought was really quite interesting. So first of all, Bernie's a career politician. I mean, I struggle with that. To me, the entire political process is just a breeding ground and a training camp and a qualification process so that the power elites can find out which two Muppets they're going to give us to choose from to be president. And you have to prove your worth in that environment of being a total line person, go with the flow, and do as you're told and support this agenda of a world government, or you're going to get spat out and kicked aside. And so with that in mind, anyone who's been a career politician, I find it really, really difficult to have any kind of faith in what they do. However, having said that, there is, of course, the Ron Paul example, and I think he is absolutely pure of heart, let's say, and has resisted all of those temptations, resisted the power grab, the money grab, etc. And so it definitely does exist. Whether or not Bernie Sanders fits into that camp, I don't know for sure. He's done some pretty cool things along the way where I've seen him really buck the trends. Speaking out again, so there was the DOMA thing that going back about 20 years where he was supporting gay rights and stuff. So that was kind of really cool. He obviously wins a lot of people over by saying he's not going to accept any money from big corporations or whatever, but he still accepts a hell of a lot of money from unions and whatever else. And so, look, there was one specific scene where I saw him, he was being interviewed by another socialist, and the socialist was saying, Bernie wanted to bring in banking done by the post office to help the poor. And I think that's a fine idea. The more competitors you can bring into the banking industry, the better. But the interviewer asked him and said, well, yeah, in Mexico, Walmart provides banking services and it's very, very successful. What about that? And there was just like absolute contempt in Bernie Sanders' face. It's like, we're not doing that in the US kind of stuff. He just hated the idea of it. Now, this could be done in one of two things. It could be because, no, I will only support the ideas for the people that are paying me, the unions, etc., and that's the path I'm going to go down. Or he could have the belief that corporations are evil and I'm going to try and destroy them, whatever. So I'm not sure if it's ideological or it's I'm doing as I'm told by the people who are funding me. But I just saw that as, I don't know. So look, the answer is I don't know about Bernie Sanders' pure of heart. Is he actually in it for the American citizen? I know a lot of his supporters fanatically say so, and I'm open to the idea, but he's a career politician and I'm a little bit uncertain about him. So I give that like a 20-25% chance that he actually is, I would, once again, pure of heart is the word I'm using for that. So, okay, now let's step past that and say that's the analysis we give for pure of heart. Next is, what about his ideology? What are his ideas going to actually help the country? And for that, I give him a big fat zero. The democratic socialism, he's a socialist, right? You can throw the word democratic out the front all you like. That's like putting lipstick on a pig. If you don't understand why socialism fails and why it's so horrific, you thought it was because the dictator was bad or because it was implemented wrong, that you're missing it. You don't understand economics. You don't understand socialism. Saying democratic socialism is something completely different is like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. And his policies are absolutely destructive and terrible for the poor, for the working class. Despite all the rhetoric, it's going to hurt the poor the most. So I give him a big fat zero for his ideology and his ideas to actually help the people of the country, even if in his heart of hearts he actually believes it will help the country. Which brings us on to Trump. I don't know, what evidence do we have that he is pure of heart? What evidence do we have that he is, in his belief system, he's genuinely trying to help the country or not help the country? Is he just trying to grab this seat of power to line his own pockets and do that like most politicians are like? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, just stupendously wealthy. Who cares? Like, why would you... You've got this life where you're absolutely free. No one tells you what to do. All of a sudden, you want to go and enter the world of politics, which is just a terrible world. You've got your complete loss of privacy. The world's in your face. Everyone's got an opinion. 80% of people hate you no matter what you believe. And it's just a horrible job. Like, why would you choose to do that? Yeah, I get it if, that you're just hungry for power, hungry for money. I get it, and that could be the case. But there's also the case of, he genuinely wants to help the world. I don't know what the correct answer is, but I would just, on my gut feeling, I give him about a 40% chance of being pure of heart and just genuinely doing this for the sake of wanting to help America, whatever his belief system is around that. On his ideology and where that will help. So he's definitely not a libertarian. He's already spoken about things like shutting down the internet, censoring the internet, and you can see through his ego, and you can see it's the nature of an entrepreneur. Like, I'm kind of like that. I don't really like working with other people and sharing the management job. It's like, when I say it, it goes. It's like, when an entrepreneur has to run their company, well, they don't have to, but some entrepreneurs run their company in a very dictatorial way. When I'm running a project, I run it that way. And it's an efficient way to get things done. I like it. And you can just see through his ego that that's how he runs his business, and I have no problem with that. It works kind of well. But he speaks I would say he speaks with contempt for the concepts of due process and the ideas of separation of powers. And I very much think that that's going to frustrate him, and he will do the same thing as Obama did, same thing as other people do. They'll use signing statements, executive orders, and they will violate the Constitution to, in their mind, get the job done. And that's something that I really, really struggle with for Trump. I see it as a huge negative for him. Also on the negative side, just the ego and the name calling. It's stupid, not very presidential. But it's not a big deal. I mean, obviously he's very, very successful in the free market despite those character traits. So those are obviously negatives, but not a big deal. I think his economic policies are going to be largely correct. Wherever possible, he's going to be, I think, reducing taxes. He's going to be reducing the welfare state, reducing the government programs, trimming down and making government more efficient. And so I think down that path, he's going to be quite good at that, and he's got the runs on the board to suggest he is going to be good at that. With regards to foreign policy, look, we have to shit or get off the pot on this one. Like, are we at war with the Middle East or not? If we're at war with the Middle East, then go in and annihilate them and end it, win the war, and move on with your life. Or you can say, I'm not going to get into that war. Forget this war. It's a dirty war. It's like a Vietnam War. It's just a guerrilla war. It's just impossible to win, and it's a pain in the ass and very, very expensive. We're just going to come home, but we're still not stupid enough to recognize the fact that past presidents and past administrations have caused a lot of problems and a lot of damage over there. So there's a lot of, I would say, valid hatred from the Middle East towards the West. But there's also a lot of religious, ideological, jihadist nonsense, and they just hate us because we're the wrong religion. And their religion is world domination. Those are facts, and that has to be acknowledged. And so unless you're a self-loathing fool, you have to acknowledge those facts and be prepared to defend yourself. So shit or get off the pot, go there, annihilate them, finish it, or withdraw, get out of their space, let them die a slow, miserable death with their ignorance, and just come back here and secure the borders and protect yourself. They're your two options. But this nonsense of just a forever war, of forever niggling, well, we're not going to go into full war, we're only going to go into half war, we're just going to poke and prod and annoy the hell out of you for decades, is just a stupid idea and a guaranteed surefire way to achieve bankruptcy really, really quickly. So that's the dumb way. I think the neocons are wrong going in there and trying to just blow everything up and whatever. Not a fan of it. I think the Democrats are willfully ignorant of the potential threats. And I think actually pulling back, securing the borders, and let's just pin our ears back and go and make a great, successful society, welcome people in as fast as we can, trustfully bring them in and let them join. And eventually, our place is, everyone who's worth anything has come to our country because it's the best, most free place in the world, and there's no one left to fight because everyone's inside. So I think that's the most sensible, it's the most moral, and it's the most likely to achieve success in terms of foreign policy and immigration policy and the like. So with regard to Trump's ideology on whether or not his ideas can achieve success for the nation, I give it about a 60% chance. So the third metric that I didn't bother judging the other candidates on was their ability to execute. So, okay, Trump has a 40% chance of being pure of heart and actually having good intentions for the country. So Trump has a 60% chance of doing an overall good for the country with his policies and so forth. And so now what about his ability to execute? And I think this is really where Trump shines. I think he's just a phenomenal leader. His free market results prove that he's a can get stuff done kind of guy. And I put him up at the 90-100% mark in terms of, especially if you to distribute it on a bell curve and compare it to other human beings, then I think he's up at the 100% mark. He's at that far end of the bell curve with his ability to execute. So of that choice, that choice of that motley crew of three, I would be voting for Trump. But then someone at the party asked me another question. He said, okay, forget about being limited by the three candidates. What about if you could just go and point to any human being anywhere in the world and say, you should be president? Who would you choose? Now, I must admit, I hardly ever watch TV. I hardly ever watch the news. So there's very little stuff that, there's lots of people that I just don't know about. And it's a hard one, but I thought about it. I couldn't go past Ron Paul. I think 100% pure of heart. His voting record was just impeccable, and it's the same message for so long. His ideology is absolutely spot on. So I give him 100% for pure of heart. I give him 100% for the correct ideology, and which brings us to his ability to execute. I don't really have any strong evidence for or against that. But I think that the first two make him far superior to anybody else that I can think of right now. So if it were possible to go and encourage Ron Paul, I would say Ron Paul, 100% ideology, 100% pure of heart, and let's say a 60-70% ability to execute. And so There you go. I thought that was an interesting conversation that I had at dinner last night, and I thought I'd share it with you. I hope you enjoy. So please let me know in the comments below, who would you choose, but who would you vote for out of those three candidates? I'd love to hear from you. And the other question is, if you weren't limited to those three candidates, you could choose anybody in the world. Who would you choose to be President of the United States? I think that'll be really interesting. And I've got a great video coming up. I actually recorded it back in the Caribbean, and I'm going to release it the next day or two. So please subscribe. It's challenging the idea that without government, the rich will get richer. And that is one of the most widely held belief systems throughout the world from both the left and the right. And so it's just kind of dispelling that myth, and it's going to be a great video. So please go ahead and subscribe, like this video, share it, and I'll see you soon. Take care.